right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we're talking about Robot Dreams, which thankfully, at the time that we recorded this episode, it was not yet, and it's still not out at the time that I'm recording this intro, but it wasn't yet Oscar nominated, and wow, it actually got the Oscar nom. So we are all rooting for it here at Piecing It Together. Robot Dreams is a really fun little animated film that is kind of unlike anything else that you've seen, and we had a really fun time getting into it. Joining me is Rachel Wagner from Rachel's Reviews and the Hallmarkies podcast, and we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces here for Robot Dreams. Hopefully, you'll be able to see this movie soon. Most likely by the time this episode's actually released, it will be out in some form, whether that's in theaters or on streaming. But we keep waiting, and it keeps not happening. But it's already February 2024 at the time I'm recording this intro, and we still don't have a date. So hopefully we'll get one soon, Neon. Where are you at, Neon? But anyway, that's all neither here nor there, since by the time this comes out, you already probably have seen the movie. Anyway, we're going to talk about Robot Dreams. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. And you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. So with that said, let's get to this conversation about Robot Dreams. All right, Rachel Wagner's with us to talk about Robot Dreams. Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I am looking forward to talking about this one. It's such a unique, weird little movie. I'm curious, I got one of those, fancy neon screener boxes. That's how I got to see this movie.
Yes.
But there doesn't seem to be any info out there about it. I know it played a few festivals and then it's just kind of it's making its way out into the world, but there doesn't seem to be much about it out there.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because I feel like it's one of those movies that could get a little bit of a following. I feel like it should be this year's Marcella Shell with Shoes On.
Yeah.
That kind of had a little bit of a following around it, and I was so proud of our little Utah Film Critics Association because we picked it as one of our best animated films of 2023. And I actually hadn't even seen it at that point, and so they were ahead of me even.
Nice.
But yeah, it premiered at Annecy. That's a big animation festival in France, and it won at Annecy. And so, yeah, and it's 100% the critics that have reviewed it on Rotten Tomatoes, including myself. And it's just a little bit frustrating because it does seem like one of those ones that you could have a decent little run for theatrical.
Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess we'll see. We're recording this before the film is actually hit any kind of a release. But we'll see once they finally do decide on the rollout of this thing, maybe they'll speed it up at the very last minute and finally actually start pushing this thing. But
yeah, I don't know what Neon's doing with it.
I don't know either. It's so strange. But before we get into pieces, did you know any of this other director's work, Pablo Berger?
I didn't. No, he was new to me. I think he's mainly done shorts, and I think it's in and then some other films in Spain.
Yes. So yeah, no, me neither.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically a debut in my eyes, and very unique movie. I am very interested to see what we have for pieces here. So let's start getting into it. What do you have for your first puzzle piece for Robot Dreams?
So I was thinking about the sort of what captures sort of the spirit of the movie, and the first thing that I thought of is definitely the Iron Giant.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you have a robot in that, but also just the theme of
Sure.
friendship, and even I think a little bit the style of the animation, the heart involved. I think it's very similar in that way. It's lighter than the Iron Giant. It's more deeper, but I think there's some similarities there.
No, absolutely. They're also, as far as stories about friendship go, there's stories that could kind of only be told through animation like this. You can't really, even though that's such a universal theme, for, friendship and whatnot, you kind of can't imagine this being told any other way. And so yeah, and of course you definitely have the the visual comparisons that could be made between these robots,
Yeah.
with the Iron Giant. So yeah, I think that's a great one to kind of kick it off with, and I definitely agree with you there.
Mhm.
I'm gonna get this one out of the way first because it's one of those puzzle pieces that's probably too new to truly be an inspiration on the film. But in a lot of ways, I kind of saw this movie like a kid's version of Beau is Afraid.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
you know, Ari Aster's insane odyssey of a guy with crippling anxiety going to visit his mother, and you know, when we're seeing this movie through this dog's point of view. He's a cartoon dog,
Mhm.
and he has lost connection with this robot who was his companion, and he wants to get back to that. And anytime we switch over to the robot's point of view, he's just imagining all of the things that could be going well and then they go badly, or things that could go worse and they go even worse than he imagined in the first place. And it's just there's a lot of anxiety in
Mhm.
this
I
couple
can see that.
basically. And I think that's something that's, just like with Beau is Afraid, to a thousandth degree that they crank that one up to. I think there is a lot of anxiety around a lot of friendships, and
Yeah.
whether or not, it's reciprocated, and, if who's making the first move, and like who is like the better friend in any given situation. So it's a very different movie, obviously. But I think as far as like those kinds of feelings of like, well, what if this other person doesn't like me? What if I put myself out there and it doesn't go well? I think back to Joaquin Phoenix in that film, and just how nervous he is about everything that could possibly happen in the world, and all of it does happen. Kind of does happen to the robot here as well, in trying to imagine getting himself back to the dog.
Yeah, I can see that. That's interesting. I would never have thought of that, which is what's interesting about this show.
Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also sort of the panic when the robot gets stuck in the sand,
Mhm.
and then, that's very well sort of depicted, and then the relief when it comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like this movie is very sweet and like very upbeat and charming,
Mhm.
Robot Dreams, but like it is kind of like horrifying, like that this robot who's basically sentient, like gets stuck in the sand and is just left there over
Yeah.
Christmas break, basically. Like that's a creepy thing to
That's
happen.
true. That's true. Well, the next one I thought of, is just I one of the things that impressed me in the movie was how it used music so effectively. That whole September sequence was so good. I thought, well done. What a
Oh
great
yeah.
song, and how well it was used, and throughout the movie. And I think movie that I think uses music incredibly well is would be Pinocchio, animated
Sure.
masterpiece, Pinocchio, and it has some similar themes of creation and what makes somebody human or real, or in this case dog sentient, I guess. What gives
Sure.
something humanity is a theme in this movie, but Pinocchio also has your humor. It has your delightful parts. It has your more tense parts. All of that, and just some of the greatest songs in the Disney library.
Mhm.
Hi diddly dee, an actor's life for
Oh,
me. Thanks. And when you wish
absolutely.
upon a star, and I got no strings to hold me down. I got no strings. Just really fun. And so, yeah, and also I think there's something to in Pinocchio, how there's no attempt to really explain its world at all. And I
Sure.
think that's something
Yeah.
that we've gotten more afraid of these days.
Mhm.
That so well people aren't going to understand it, so we've got to explain it when you don't need to. And I I was this is gonna sound like a weird analogy, but, we talk about that sometimes on Hallmarky's podcast with, the Hanukkah movies, because sometimes they
Mhm.
can be trying too hard to explain the ins and outs of Hanukkah within the Hanukkah movies, and it's like, we don't need to know. Like, all we need to know is, why is this important to the characters? right? We don't need to
Yeah.
know the intricacies of the Maccabees and all this stuff. And like, if you can work it into the script, that's fine. But it just you don't need to have the Wikipedia in the script. Like, all we need to know is, how does this impact our characters? Why do they care about it? And then if we want to, learn more about it, then we can do that in our own time. But it's the same way with anything in a movie, that like, we don't really need to know all we need to know is, why is this important to our characters? We don't need to know why are dogs sentient in this world. We don't need to know like
Sure.
why he's making a robot, and are other people making robots? All those questions, who cares? We don't need to know. Same thing with Pinocchio. We don't need to know that, why are there walking cats and why are there regular cats in Pinocchio?
Yeah,
Like, what?
exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly, exactly. I think it's a great piece, and I think it's a great point as well because, yeah, this movie, what I liked so much about it is it feels like a throwback to the cartoons of, the
Yes,
old days
I
when we
agree.
didn't need to, like you're saying, explain away every single thing. I mean, we just got done recording our fall wrap up on your podcast, and how many prequels did we have in the top
Yeah,
10? Like, do we need prequels? Even though I know everybody loved Wonka, but I mean,
right.
we don't need
Yeah.
prequels. We don't need all these things explaining every little detail. So I think that's a great one. I'm just going to jump right on top there with Pinocchio, and I'm going to put Peanuts
Oh.
for a puzzle piece
Mhm.
here with the silent cartoon characters. It's funny, we've had a lot of movies lately. We had No One Will Save You earlier this year, which I loved that movie. But these movies with like silent protagonists, and nobody talks in this movie. There's no dialogue. A little bit of like
Mhm.
screams, or maybe like third
Right.
characters like were making comments, but no actual dialogue. So you're kind of brought back to that kind of Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe, and there's like a lot of very kind of ironic, kind of melancholy almost humor, just like with Peanuts. And so I was definitely thinking back to a lot of that kind of stuff, and just like you're talking about with Pinocchio, like it just feels very throwback in that kind of a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I think that's a good pick. I wouldn't have thought of that, but yeah,
Right
in
on.
the friendship, that's a big theme of Peanuts as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. What do you got
I
next?
also have a show next, as opposed to a movie. I have Futurama next. I
Sure.
think the style is very similar. In the character, especially the character design of the robot, it feels very, Rama esque, and
Yeah.
there's like a little bit of sass, I think, in this movie, a little
Hmm.
bit of personality, and I think that you can feel that in Futurama as well. It's very funny, and it sometimes uses music, and so yeah, I think they're pretty close.
Yeah, I think so too. I think animation style definitely, like, it's probably the closest thing if you were trying to describe this movie to somebody who hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
Like Futurama is pretty close in style, and yeah, and definitely that kind of sense of humor of it all definitely works, and of course the robot. So yeah, that's a great one to include here. I will go with a 2022 film, After Yang from
Mm.
Coconada. A much heavier film dealing with a family and the loss of their AI companion helper, which is exactly where we're here with this dog who has this AI companion, this robot companion, and you see these flashes of just the fun that the family had together when that robot was still around before it broke down. Basically, what happens in that movie is the robot is broken down, and the father is kind of going out into the world to try to figure out a way to fix it because his family just loves it so much. And you see these moments you were just talking about with Pinocchio about how important music is to this movie. You see these moments of the family just gathered around dancing with their robot. And like that's like a big part of showing just how much the robot was a big connection for the family. And now that it's gone, they've lost that. And in Robot Dreams, that's one of the sweeter, more fun moments that we get to see between the robot and the dog before they get split up, is just all the dancing that they do, and so much fun with September and other songs that they play. But September is definitely like kind of the centerpiece of the film in a way.
Mhm.
So yeah, After Yang, a great movie. Big recommendation for people who haven't seen it. and it deals with robots in a fairly similar way.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. The next one for me, and this was probably the first one that I actually thought of, is Wally. I think is a clear influence. There's so many ways.
Sure.
The way that Wally uses music, particularly Hello Dolly, in
Hmm.
the and now whenever I go see a production of Hello Dolly, I always just think of Wally. I don't think Hello Dolly.
Yeah, sure.
And it only takes a moment to last the whole life, your whole life through. And so I think that the Wally does Hello Dolly better than Hello Dolly does Hello Dolly.
That's funny.
And but this friendship between Eve and Wally, and the like sweet quiet moments, and then the bigger moments, and it's all sort of there. I think it's an easy comparison.
Absolutely, yeah. There's that longing, for connection in both of these movies,
Hmm.
and yeah, friendship being what really makes it all worthwhile. And I think that it's a great one to include here. So definitely, I'll go with one that I was thinking about. I've only seen it once, so it might be a little bit off base, but I wanted to include it anyway because it's a movie that I think everybody forgot about, and I actually really liked it from a few years ago called Finch with
Oh.
Tom Hanks. It was one of I think the first Apple TV movies, but it's basically a post-apocalyptic, planet. Everything's uninhabitable, but this guy, played by Tom Hanks, is living with a dog and a robot. And he's kind of trying to make sure that they're okay for when he's eventually gone. And obviously there's no human character here in Robot Dreams, but the idea of the dog and the robot, got to live out, this weird, very cartoonish world where they got to like live together and just have their own like little friendship and their own little life together. It just reminded me of that, just without a human at the center of the relationship. And I think Finch is a great little movie.
Hmm.
And dogs and robots, two of my favorite things. I like dogs and robots.
Yeah, I did think of it's not one of my pieces, but I did think of Love and Monsters as well. That
Mm,
movie about,
yeah.
there's that great scene with the robot in the that's uh, about halfway through, and then his whole relationship with the dog, and I mean that movie practically got me through 2020. It's so good. I love that movie.
Yeah, that was a big one of that year
Hmm.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Well, what do you got next?
Next up, I have the Lego Movie was one
Mhm.
I thought of. That you have this, particularly I think in the way that it uses music, in uh, the everything is awesome, and that it's not like a musical, but I think that the September sequence and everything awesome are very similar,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
similar.
no, absolutely, and, there's so much joy in this movie, even though there's the melancholy aspect too of the fact that they've been separated. They also are just, like, kind of
Yeah.
living life to the fullest, so there's a lot of that. Is there you obviously, big on animation, what with your podcast and everything, is there an animated movie of the last 10 years that has been as inspiring on other films than the Lego Movie? I think that is a puzzle piece that comes up all the
Oh,
time on the
really? That's
show.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because it got kind of ignored by awards bodies and stuff. Didn't get nominated for an Oscar, so it just goes to show, what that means. The last 10 years, you
Sure.
said?
Yeah.
Mm, it would be 10 years because I think it came out in 2014. Um,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I feel like there's a big one I'm not thinking of, but yeah, I mean, yeah, because we've had, I mean, from Disney, we've had mostly sequels in that time.
Right.
I mean, Inside Out, I don't know. I have a great fondness for the Cartoon Saloon Irish trilogy that
Sure.
I love those movies, Song of the Sea and Wolfwalkers and all that stuff. But as far as like a really, like a big hit, I don't know if I can think of one.
Yeah.
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 And there's
It seems like it's
I mean
it's
maybe Spider-Verse.
yeah, I guess, what with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles this past year,
Yeah.
that was like the kind of the first inspired by the Spider-Verse, and I'm sure that we'll see more
The
as, we continue
Yeah, and
forward.
you could definitely see Spider-Verse influencing in Last Wish, Puss in Boots Last Wish, and
Oh, yeah, sure.
a bunch of recent animated films, and And I always say, there'll probably become a point where I'll get tired of this sort of hybrid 2D CG kind of thing, but like that point
Yeah.
is not now. I still
Yeah.
love it.
Not yet.
I
Not
still
yet.
love it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was definitely very influential, and the way that it I think what was most impressive about it was the way that it was funny. It had heart to it. The way that the animation moved and flowed, so
Hmm.
that it felt like stop motion, but it was actually CG, was
Yeah.
amazing. The way that it felt like somebody actually building blocks, I think was very impressive.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wish that the whole franchise had done better, the Legos. I don't know, why exactly it didn't wasn't as bigger than it was, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed them.
Right on, right
Yeah.
on. Well, Lego Movie's a great piece here for Robot Dreams. I will go another AI based movie that is again very different in tone from this one, but I think there's comparisons to draw. I'm going to go with Spike Jones' Her.
Mhm.
Walking Phoenix again. I didn't realize that when I wrote this down, but you know, in a way, you could say maybe it's a little tad unhealthy that, all of dogs, joy and friendship is coming from this robot companion. And you think to her and how this AI voiced by Scarlett Johansson is kind of like his only outlet. It's his only friend at this point. It's like all of his his romance is there, all of his games and fun are
Yeah.
there. Everything is put onto this AI and he has nothing without it. And the effects that has on him here in Robot Dreams, dog really kind of has nothing until he finds this robot. And then when the robot goes, he's kind of lost for a while. And, part of the beautiful thing about the movie is, they had this, great impact on one another, but they're okay
Yeah.
by the end and they have, they're separate, but, hopefully great futures going forward. So it's definitely a much more upbeat and hopeful ending. But, just the way that these AI companions, how they kind of become our everything. I think,
Mhm.
looking back at her, you can see comparisons to Robot Dreams.
Yeah, in a way, like, does it really matter? Like, if we're feeling joy, who cares
Right.
what the source of the joy is,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And especially as we go forward in this world,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird, weird world. So, what do you got for your next piece?
Well, my next one the next one I thought of is E.T. Out of E.T. You think about
Nice.
the friendship between Elliot and E.T. And how that grows over the course of the movie, and the in that case, obviously an alien, but I think it's somewhat similar in the mixture of heart and great music, and some really funny scenes like the kiss in the school, the quiet man.
Hmm.
That's really funny. Uh, and I mean, who doesn't like ET? It's great.
I know. It's just great. And again, that's the kind of thing like we were starting this conversation talking about like we hope this movie Robot Dreams at the time of recording, it's not out
Yeah,
yet in wide release or anything. We hope they get it out there. We hope people see it because I can't imagine people watching this and not getting that same kind of
yeah,
feeling of like this is just great. This is just a sweet, fun movie,
yeah.
the kind that I used to love watching on a sick day or something like that,
I
you
was
know?
so happy that they nominated it for Utah Film Critics Association because I finally sat down and watched it, and I was like, it immediately went up to number 5 on my best of the year.
Mhm.
I just loved it because there were a lot of other animated films this year that I admired, that I liked, I enjoyed, but I didn't love them, and
Yeah.
I was really trying to have an authentic list of movies that I loved. And so I was happy that I found one that I loved, and then there were a couple others, but that I really liked. But it was the one animated film this year that I felt the most passionate about.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was so sweet.
I will go with The Secret Life of Walter Mitty for another puzzle
Okay.
piece here.
Yeah.
As soon as Robot is trying to, dream up these ways to, get back to Dog, and you never really know that it's a dream sequence that's starting. I mean, eventually you kind of get a sense of the rhythm of what's happening, but at first it just kind of seems like, oh wow, he got out of the beach and he's gonna make it home, and oh, this is great, and then nope, it's just snapped away from him. It was
Mhm.
all just a dream, and actually something happens to make it where it's going to be even more impossible to get back to Dog. And
Yeah.
that keeps happening over and over again. I thought of these dreams that Walter Mitty has in that film, and how it's always like the best possible thing, and then oh no, that's not happening. So it definitely kind of feels a little bit like that.
Yeah, that was on my I do this blind spot series every year where I,
Hmm.
watch a movie a month that I've never seen before, and that was actually one of last year's picks, Walter Mitty.
Nice.
I watched both of them, the original 1960s, with Danny Kaye and the newer one, and so that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed both. They're very
Right on.
different, both of them, very different.
Sure.
Yeah, so I can see that, and there's definitely a sense of sort of dreaming and
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, I mean, I think I could also have as a piece, I could also have Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
I think so too. I think you
Mhm.
said it at the beginning, but I think that this really does kind of occupy that space for this year.
Mhm.
And it's just a super sweet movie that, again, I said it, before when you were bringing up ET, but it's just hard to imagine someone not liking this
Yeah.
movie.
It's true. Like this is a movie that I could picture people being like, "It was fine," and not like loving it. Like I loved it, but it's hard to
Mhm.
imagine someone like actively disliking it.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like what?
Absolutely. Well, that's a great one. Is that your last piece?
Yeah, that was the last one that I had written
Okay.
down.
So
Yeah.
I've got one last one. It's a very tiny one, but I couldn't not include it because there is an octopus drummer at one point, so I had to include Aquaman on my list. So I love my Aquaman,
Yeah.
and there is an octopus drummer. I don't know if it's the same octopus drummer, but maybe it is. But
I think you could make an argument for Guardians of the Galaxy, though, the way that he
hey,
uses music.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
The
Absolutely.
music drops were so good.
Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
a mixtape, like the tape that, he plays in his little built-in
Mhm.
boombox, so, and,
Yeah.
of course, September is track number 1, but, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely, I could see
Yeah.
that. Well, I'll read down the
Yeah.
list of puzzle pieces that we just brought up, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts, but, we talked about The Iron Giant, Beau is Afraid, Pinocchio, Peanuts, Futurama, After Yang, Wall-E, Finch, Love and Monsters, The Lego Movie, Her, E.T., The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Aquaman, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Going into just some closing thoughts, I didn't really have a piece for it, although I guess a few of these movies at least have this in them as well. But there's a lot of pop culture references in here too. Obviously, we get
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
Um, that's also a fun thing, and that could maybe go back to something like Futurama, or really a lot of these.
Or
I think you
Lego
can.
had a
Yeah,
lot
the
of
Lego is a great
yeah.
example of that. So yeah, so that's just another thing here. But yeah, any other thoughts? Anything that you wanted to get into that we didn't get to while doing puzzle pieces?
Oh, I think that, this was a lot of fun. I hope people find it, hunt it down, watch it. It is really, really sweet, and don't be surprised if come the Oscars for Best Animated Feature is very competitive this year. I
Hmm.
think that The Boy and the Heron and, Spider-Verse are locks, but the other 3 spots are kind of in, it's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe I think Elemental's pretty much a lock. So the other space is what, it's going to, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Robot Dreams were to be come out, because a lot of times they do give those, like, extra spaces to an indie film like Boy in the World, or Cheeto and Reva, or to Marcel the Shell, or Song of the Sea. Some of these more smaller releases that then people find out about them, and they
Yeah.
go see them.
Yeah, it almost seems like every year there's like one animated nominee that's like, I'd never even heard of that movie.
Yeah,
So this could be that movie, and hopefully
yeah,
people will hear about it. So
yeah.
right on,
So
right on.
yeah.
Rachel, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Ooh. Um. So I saw, it was really fun for New Year's. I went to there. I'm very excited because there is this new revival cinema called Maven Cinemas in American Fork, near my house. And for New Year's Eve, went to a masquerade party and saw the Phantom of the Opera, the much maligned Phantom of the Opera, with Gerard Butler and Emmy Rossum, and I had a
Oh,
great
man.
time, and I enjoy it. I think it's a fun movie. I'm a sucker for a musical, so I mean, very easy to please when it comes to musicals. But I really had a great time. That was peak movie going
That's
experience. It
awesome.
was
That's
fun.
awesome. I've never seen that version.
I
I
like
would
it.
be curious.
Some of the singing
Yeah.
isn't the best, but it's fun for
Yeah.
me.
Right on. Right
Yeah.
on. Well, Rachel, tell people where they can find you and your podcast.
Yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And also at the Hallmarkies podcast. And we cover all the Hallmark movies, rom-coms, holiday films, everything going on there. We got the Hallmark shows, and we also cover All Creatures Great and Small, which is starting this week, which is one of my favorite shows. So yeah, we have a lot of fun over there. So check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show, and I'm sure we'll get you back again sometime.
Yeah, please.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Robot Dreams. Thanks to Rachel Wagner for joining me on that one. And thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, of course, make sure you are subscribed. We've got a lot of episodes on the way. And if you get subscribed, you'll, of course, find out about them as they come out. You can also drop us a little 5-star rating and review. It helps to make sure more people check out the show. And you can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. We also have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content for Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, which is another movie podcast that I produce, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there. So if you like the show, keep listening. But if you want to support us, you could go do that by signing up for the Patreon. It's patreon.com/by David Rosen. We also have a Vouch store. It's vouch.store/piecing it together, where you can buy a bunch of cool products, some really great coffee, and some really cool other stuff as well. Anything you pick up over there helps support the show as well. So check it out. Again, it's vouch.store/piecing it together. And with that said, I think that does it for this episode on Robot Dreams. Let's close this out with a piece of music. And you guys who've been listening for a while know about my little comedy novelty group, the Pup Pups. Well, I just randomly decided this year to start working on some more Pup Pup songs after spending 15 years making the first album. And somehow I already practically have the whole new album done. It's going to come out this year for sure. And why don't I give you a little preview of one of those songs? This is a song, it's an ode to wet food called Can Can, and it feels like something that the robot and the dog would love dancing to in Robot Dreams. So this is Can Can from the second album by the Pup Pups, which will be out sometime this year. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
Well, you know I love that wet food. The stinky stuff's the best. And I promise if you give it to me now, I'll try not to make a mess. Sometimes it tastes like fishies, sometimes it tastes like chicken. And when I hear that can go click, you know my lips are what I'm gonna be licking. Can, just give me a can. Can, I need a little of that can. Just give me that can. Just give me a can. Can, I need a little of that can. You know I love that wet food. One can ain't never enough. So come on, mom and dad, you know I need a little of the funky stuff. Sometimes it tastes like fishies, sometimes it tastes like cheese. So come on, mom and dad, you know you got to give me what I need. Can, just give me a can. I need a little of that can. Just give me that can. Just give me a can. Can, I need a little of that can. Can, just give me a can. I need a little of that can. I need a little of that can food.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.